In this video, I'm going to be talking about what I do not like about my 2023 Genesis G70. Quick disclaimer, none of these things I'm going to mention are deal breakers for me. I still love the car. I'm going to keep it. Rather, there are more things that I personally dislike or just find annoying. So in the grand scheme of things, you guys might find some of these things to be trivial or not bother you at all. But all that being said, let's hop into this video. So the first complaint and biggest complaint I have about this car is the terrible eyesore that Genesis sticks right in front of you. You know what it is. It's that awful, half digital, half analog abomination of a gauge cluster. I don't know what else to call it. Now, the reason that this gauge cluster bothers me so much is, for one, this car costs nearly $60,000 brand new, all right? And cars that cost half as much of this all have full digital gauge clusters, okay? It's just part of the equation. And then second, this full digital gauge cluster has been in the G70 since 2019. So that's 5 years that this technology has been around in this car. But for whatever reason, all the models that come to the United States, they do not get the full digital gauge cluster. Now, I do think it is important to note that you can get the full digital gauge cluster on the GV70 and GV80 SUVs, as well as the G80 and G90 sedans for the United States market. Just for whatever reason, they have failed to put it in the G70 and the US market, but they have incorporated it into all of their other vehicles. But a quick note on that, speaking to the GV70 specifically, if you want to get the full digital gauge cluster, you have to add a $15,000 Sport Prestige package just to get that gauge cluster. So it is what it is, guys. There is another reason why this gauge cluster annoys me so much, and it's that the full digital ones that are in the non-US spec models, they look super crisp, they're like super clean, and they look really sharp. You can find videos of them online. But on top of that, they also have really cool animations when you switch between drive modes, which again looks super neat. And this leads me to my next point. The half digital portion that is in the United States spec models of the gauge cluster, they don't even have the animations that are in the full digital ones. I'm like, what the heck? Like, first off, you give us the half digital contraption, and then on top of it, you don't even give us the like cool animations. I'm like, we still have half a digital cluster here. Like, you can still make those animations work. Like, just put a little effort into programming, guys. Come on. Okay, again, gotta calm down. Heart palpitations, man. All right. Now, obviously, I was perfectly aware going into the purchase of this car that I was not going to get the full digital gauge cluster, and I accepted that it was just never going to happen. So, compromise I was willing to make, but I'm still super salty about it. If anyone out there watching this video knows why the United States has never gotten the full digital gauge cluster in the G70, please leave a comment below. I'm going to highlight it because I need to know the answer to this question. Now, all that to be said, let me know what you guys think about this gauge cluster. I'm really curious to get your opinions, because I know I'm not the only person who feels this strongly about it. I've read a lot of Genesis forums and Reddit threads of other people with some very strong feelings as well. So again, yeah, let me know what you guys think about this half digital, half analog cluster in the G70. Okay, so topic number 2. The next thing I don't like about this car is how uncomfortable the seats are. And I honestly just think this is a me problem, because I can't find anyone else on the internet that complains about the seats in this car being uncomfortable. So after sitting in this car for like 20 minutes or more, my back always starts to hurt, which is really odd because my back never hurts when I sit in cars. I've also spent hour-long drives playing with the seat controls in this car, and I just can't find a position that doesn't make my back hurt. Now, the reason this is such an issue for me and something I think worth mentioning and a complaint is because, like I said, I've never sat in any car that makes my back hurt. Like, never have I ever. And like I said, again, I think it might just be a personal problem, because the only thing I can find on the internet about the seats in this car is how comfortable and nice they are. So that's just a hammy problem. But for those of you that do own this car, I'm curious what you think about the seats. Do you find them uncomfortable? Do you find them uncomfortable? Let me know so I can determine if I'm just crazy or weird or whatever. So yeah. All right, moving on to complaint number 3, and that is the highway driving assistance mode for this car, or self-driving mode, if you will. If you're not familiar with HDA, or highway driving assistance, it's what Genesis essentially calls its self-driving mode. The car steers itself on the highway along with utilizing adaptive cruise control, so you're not going to crash into anybody. You're not going to run off the road. You can completely take your hands off the wheel and it'll drive for you. Self-driving. Woohoo! So this mode works pretty good about 80-90% of the time, But that other like 10-20% of the time, it does this weird thing where the steering wheel gets like off balanced and starts to jiggle back and forth, just like ever so slightly enough to rock the car and make you car sick. And so I've read online that other people have this issue as well. It's not just me. I've found that whenever this happens, all you have to do is give the steering wheel a firm grip and just hold it for like 10 seconds. And it, I guess, basically just reassures the car that you're in control and that you're there and it's not driving by itself. And it fixes the problem and it goes back to normal. So, yeah. The next biggest complaint I have about this car is how tiny the rear seats are in this vehicle. Now, quick note on that. I went into the purchase of this vehicle knowing that the rear legroom and rear seats in this car were absolutely tiny. I was actually looking at buying a two-door coupe, however you want to pronounce that. So whether or not this car had seats in the back of it, I couldn't have really cared less because I never have passengers in my car. And like I said, I was looking at buying a two-door. So this kind of was just like a little bit of a plus. Like I can maybe squeeze people back in here, but honestly, my Scion TC has more legroom in the back of it than my wife's SUV. Let's put it that way. So the fact that this car has 4 doors and it has less room than a 2-door car, such as my Scion TC, I find that a little bit embarrassing. They honestly, like, if I'm being totally honest with you guys, they should have just made this car a 2-door. Like, there is no point to have put 4 doors on this vehicle. So let me just crawl back here. This is how my wife keeps her seat. And first off, let me show you, my feet are being crushed right now. My heels are up against whatever you want to call this. And if I sit back at all, my knees are now in the back of the seats. So, and my wife is a normal sized person. This is how she keeps her seat. And yeah, you do not want to be in the back of this car for any extended amount of time. So if you're someone who's wanting to purchase this vehicle and you plan on having passengers in this car, I would highly advise against it. Now, the last and final complaint I want to mention is the exhaust note on this car. It's just not quite as aggressive and loud as I would have liked it to be. And on top of that, the exhaust is like, it's really quiet and it's really muffled inside the vehicle, which I totally get. Like, this is supposed to be a luxury car. It's supposed to be a refined, quiet ride. Like, I totally get that. But I was kind of hoping that with this being Genesis's, I don't know if I said that right, Genesis's. Anyway, with this being Genesis's, like, more sporty performance car, I would have hoped they had done a little bit more with the exhaust, especially like when you put it into Sport Plus mode. I really wish they had like tuned the engine so that it gives you some burbles and backfires, that kind of fun stuff. But all that being said, I wanted to mention something interesting about this car, and that is how totally different it sounds from the inside versus outside the vehicle. And if you're curious what this car sounds like, I made a video doing some drive-bys and launches, some pretty spicy content. I've put a link in the description below and also on the screen if I can figure out how to do that. If not, it's in the description below. So that being said, let me give you guys a little short story and example to put into perspective how much different this car sounds driving it versus like standing outside. So my friend came over to visit me one day, and as he was pulling up in his G70, I thought that he had modded the exhaust on his car because it sounded pretty freaking sweet. Like nothing I had ever heard or experienced while driving the car. So he got out of his car and I was like, dude, what did you do to your exhaust? Like, this car sounds incredible. And he was like, he laughed at me. He's like, I haven't done anything. He was like, I would have told you. And his car is the exact same 3.3 liter twin turbo V6. And we both have the Takeda AFE air intakes. So the exact same car. And like, I'm not lying to you guys, this thing sounded like, it did not sound at all like the same car I had been driving for the past 6 months. Like, sounded like an entirely different engine in an entirely different car, which I've never experienced before. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the exhaust. Take them if you will. But I am curious to know what you guys think about the exhaust on this car. Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? Is it quozy? You know, can you live with it? I think I can live with it. I do want to mod my exhaust in the future, but I'm waiting to see if anyone comes out with new systems. I am not a fan of the ARK exhaust system or the Shark Racing out of Korea. I'm really hoping like Worlo or someone else will come out with the system for this vehicle. If not, a few years down the road, I might end up doing some kind of custom exhaust setup and dish a few $1,000s out on that to make this car sound how it should. All that being said, I think we're now going to conclude this video. I don't have too many major complaints about this car, just some minor annoyances here and there. You know, the perfect car doesn't exist, and I realize that. Nothing's going to be able to satisfy everything you want from a car, but to me, this G70 came pretty close to that, which is why I chose it over all the other competition. Sure, it has some issues here and there, but nothing that's a deal breaker. So, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget, I'll be posting another one talking about what I like about this car and some of my favorite features about it. So, subscribe for that if you want to hear me ramble about stuff in the future. So, see you later.